London calling to the faraway towns, now war's declared and battle come down. These apocalyptic lyrics from the Clash's famous punk opus heralded a step change in the ongoing culture war that had dogged Britain since its financial and colonial ruin in 1945, after which its traditional culture went under the knife, while reducing London herself to a multiracial melting pot akin to the Tower of Babel. The city of Chaucer, Shakespeare and Wren has been symbolically reduced to a KFC-feeding termite nest of inter-ethnic tribal rivalry, where an alien like Barbara Roche, former immigration minister under a Labour government, apparently feels more at ease. The excessive Rockman-like profiteering of the Conservative leader of Westminster Council, Dame Shirley Porter, the daughter of Tesco magnate Jack Cohen, led to her temporary flight to Israel during an inquiry into her controversial conduct, where, by the way, she later founded the Porter Center for Environmental Studies at Tel Aviv University. But these fire starters are merely the tip of the iceberg. Far greater and long-term damage has been inflicted by a succession of characters like Ken Livingstone, a committed hard-left socialist who encouraged the Brixton branch of the Black Panthers to join the Labour Party in 1968, Boris Johnson, the former mayor of London and now resident of No. 10 Downing Street, whose step-grandfather was Zionist Federation President Teddy Seif, and who appointed Priti Patel as Home Secretary, Sajid Javid as Chancellor of the Exchequer, a committed Muslim who was sworn into government office on the Quran, then visited the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem the following year, and of course Sadiq Khan, the intellectually as well as physically diminutive current occupant of Mr. Johnson's former exalted office, who has been linked to Suleiman Ghani, a fundamentalist who openly calls for an Islamic State of Britain. Each and every one of these characters facilitates such wretched spectacles as the calypso-cavorting Afro-Caribbean Carnival in Notting Hill, where rapes, muggings and drug dealing run rife annually, while throngs of pushy zealots fill Trafalgar Square at Eid to pay homage to a pedophile. These denizens of Western destruction surround themselves with race-hustling acolytes like Bernie Grant, who was a council leader when the 1985 Broadwater farm riot took place, and where Keith Blakelock was hacked to death with a machete. Lee Jasper dished out Greater London Authority grants to his black friends. Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, a woman who takes every opportunity to establish legal safe routes to flood the United Kingdom with low-IQ welfare dependents who resemble herself, and David Lammy, who attempts to weaponize every failure of his community to enter Oxbridge, shake down compensation for the Grenfell Tower inferno by joining the postmodern Baroness Doreen Lawrence of Clarendon, mother of the long-remembered and much-lamented Sir Stephen, screaming racism at the top of his voice. And since the Blair government's secretive open borders policy between 2000 and 2009, an act revealed in quite intimate detail by his advisor and speechwriter, Andrew Nether, in the London Evening Standard, in which he said London was a magnet for migration, and an act described by Lord Andrew Green of Migration Watch as a conspiracy perpetrated against the people of Britain, the problems have only accelerated. These are the fulfillments of the Clash's hyperbolic prediction. In London, 78% of the city's gang members are of Black or Afro-Caribbean heritage, 7% are Asian, predominantly Pakistani and Indian, and 3% are Arab or Middle Eastern. Even Trevor Phillips, former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, admitted that despite the media scrupulously avoiding all mention of the ethnicity of the perpetrators, the overwhelming majority of these committing knife crimes are Somalis, Ethiopians, North and Central Africans, and Afghans. Then there is the Albanian Mafia, which runs the cocaine trade through the port of Rotterdam into Hertfordshire Hull, predominantly black Peckham boys presiding over TV comic legends Del and Rodney's South London Manor, and the Tottenham Mandem, controlling whole council estates in North London. The Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Bengali crews like the Brick Lane Massive in the East End, extending their rule out over Redbridge, Waltham Forest, Newham, Ealing, Brent, Hounslow and Dagenham, and the Tamil Snake Gang in Croydon and Wembley. These subcultures are more representative of Jamaica, Somalia or Liberia than the leafy lanes of Dulwich or Blackheath Village. The whole diversity circus is being cheered on by the media-promoted gay icons like Graham Norton, Sandy Toksvig, Alan Carr, Sue Perkins, and Rona Cameron, who no doubt fully endorse LGBT lessons in primary schools and the distribution of trans-inclusion gender toolkits forced upon elementary schools in Merton and Wandsworth. Meanwhile, Cressida Dick, the lesbian commissioner for the Metropolitan Police Service in London, and Neil Basu, the head of counter-terrorism in the UK, stoke fears of non-existent right-wing terrorism whenever the opportunity arises, even when 97% of all terrorist acts since the year 2000 have been committed by Muslims. Now Britons are subjected to the spectacle of Meghan Markle's comments about social injustice from her taxpayer-funded luxury home, watching as she stares imperiously down in a Stella McCartney black-belted Boulia coat from a balcony above the cenotaph on Remembrance Day, while European history is rewritten before their very eyes, where Commonwealth troops from as far afield as India, Bengal and Palestine were the real heroes on the battlefields of the Somme, Passchendaele and Marne, something which ignorant English youth could be forgiven for after watching the BBC's Dunkirk series, where nearly half of the British Expeditionary Force trapped on the beaches in 1940 were portrayed as being black. This is now gaining traction under the High Government's meme called Remember Together, regardless of nationality, creed or color, conjured up by a think tank called the British Future Organization. Furthermore, the BBC and other mainstream media outlets singularly fail to discuss the Earth's population explosion, particularly in Africa, wherein 100 million males are projected to enter the European continent this century, and the environmental degradation being caused by this mass movement of people. Instead, they glorify autistic marionettes such as Greta Thunberg, the Laura Croft of the Venus-loving vegans, creating media-safe spaces for Extinction Rebellion activists who drive in luxury Range Rovers, while horizons of thick smog hang over Beijing, New Delhi, and sub-Saharan Africa, to whom a free pass is given, as these do not fall into the liberal narrative of evil Western culture. The Ice Age is coming, the sun is zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is growing thin, London calling to the imitation zone. Forget it, brother, you can go it alone. London calling to the zombies of death. Quit holding out and draw another breath. This grim prophecy was made against the grainy black and white imagery of The Clash, playing the opening track from their 1979 double album. While floating on a Thames barge, Joe Strummer barks out his vehement vocals into the sheeting rain, as the song slowly fades out with a series of stringed beacons created by Mick Jones's guitar pickups, spelling SOS in Morse code. For those few true Britons left, nothing could be more relevant or grim, knowing now what was previously foretold, that their call for help will fall upon deaf ears, and that at some appointed time, in the not-too-distant future, a butcher will walk in on them to begin the long, drawn-out process of cutting their throats.